All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Growing Up Alien. On tonight's show, we have, back by popular demand, where is Frank Chille? We have Frank Chille, finally, right? We didn't have some Yasi said, she didn't have to get her rope and tie him up and drag him on the show this time. So that was a win-win for us. We also have our special co-host, Linda. It's just like old times, just like we used to do on Potentials. So it's such a nice warm, fuzzy experience. We also have Mr. Smokey joining us there on the couch. We have Jesse, but he's on the chair, trying to go to sleep. But that's not going to happen. Sorry. Sorry. That's not going to happen. So yeah, tonight Frank is here to talk about really one of the early contactees, if not maybe one of the first contactees to actually step forward like in a public setting. Albert Coe. Albert Coe and his space alien friend from Tau Ceti. So, what's nice about our presentation here is that Frank actually was able to talk to Albert and Albert's wife about their experiences with the visitors. So, I'm going to hand it over to Frank. So.
Well, thank you. You're very, very kind. And it's a joy to be able to share this again with you and Linda and the audience.
Oh no, and Frank froze. Oh no.
No, come back, Frank. Come back.
Isn't that funny? The minute we meant to start, he freezes.
Mm.
Oh no.
Well, hopefully he'll come back.
Well, it was so nice.
You froze. There we go. I'm gonna leave all that in because this happened. People are used to this. Well, we had freezing last night, and you froze. We were fine until we started filming. Then you froze. So.
Yeah. So should I start over, or am I all
Yes.
right?
You'll have to start over. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I had grown up reading stories of the contactees in the 50s, like George H. Williamson, George Adamski, Howard Menger, and the contactees who met individuals who look like us. And I never thought I'd get a chance to meet one myself. But when I joined this Del Valle UFO organization, and I was made the recording secretary of it, one of the speakers was Albert Coe. And I got a chance to meet him, and he told this incredible story to us. He was released from his star friends to be able to share it publicly. And the first time he shared it publicly was at Del Valle UFO, our organization in Cinnaminson, New Jersey. And he told the story that when he was 16 years of age, him and his best friend decided to go on a camping trip. It was a combination canoe trip and camping trip. And it was at the Mattawa River, which is in Canada, and it's adjacent to New York State. But they took their canoe up, and they figured they would be gone for probably about a week. So they were canoeing along the Mattawa River, and they reached a point where there was a lot of rapids. And both Albert and his friend chose different banks along the river to try to find a clear path to cross the rapid area without damaging their canoe or maybe getting into trouble along the way. So Albert took one bank of the river and his friend took the other, and they were separated by quite some distance. And Albert said that he was walking along the riverbank, and all of a sudden he started hearing a voice saying, "Help, help me, someone please help me." But it was very, very faint. So Albert thought at first that maybe the sound of the voice was coming from the wooded area. So he started walking back into the wooded area, and the voice became very, very faint. So he started going back again closer to the river, and he heard it louder. So he got close to the river, and he heard the voice get louder, and he looked down a crevice that was along the river, and he saw this young man that he thought to be maybe 20 or 22 years of age, who had fallen into this crevice and was wedged against the wall of the crevice and pinned between a rock and the crevice wall. So Albert jumped down there, and he noticed that this fellow was wearing a one-piece outfit where the clothing and the boots were all incorporated into the outfit. And he had a very unusual belt that had lights on it, but the lights had been broken apparently during his fall. So when Albert jumped down into the crevice, the fellow said, "Oh, thank God someone heard me." He says, "I've been stuck down here." He said, "I fell backwards." And Albert said, "Well, what were you doing here?" And he said, "I was fishing." And he had this little wand in his hand. And Albert said, "You were fishing and you have no fishing pole?" And this fellow said, "Well, this wand is a collapsed fishing pole." And he touched a part of it and it opened into a fishing rod. And Albert had never seen anything like that. So he said, and he also noticed that the fellow had broken his ankle, and the ankle was badly ruptured. So Albert put a splint around it, and he said, "Let me try to hoist you up to the surface level." And he couldn't. This fellow was wedged so deeply against the wall of the crevice in the rock. So Albert said, "I have a length of rope," and he said, "I have a hatchet. I'm going to go into the woods and cut down a piece of a branch and try to make a hoist to hoist you up out of the crevice." So that's what he did. He went and he cut a piece of a branch, probably maybe about 4 or 5 feet long, tied the rope around it, tied it around the waist of this individual, and was able to hoist him up. And I think, Andrew, you have an illustration of that, don't you?
Let me pull some up. Bear with me while I fudge here to pull up the pictures. So here they are. Yeah, these illustrations are from the original book. So this is the cover. I'm going to put a link to for folks in the description section because you can get a copy of this book for free. And I'll put the PDF link on there.
Yes.
This is the original cover. My book is the modern. There are several modern versions as well. If somebody wants to actually, buy a modern version, they can do that. So that's the cover of the book. And let's get to the next. I do things, and everybody knows my Zoom has to have things in video format. Here's just a picture. Somebody did an AI of potentially what the visitor looks like, but that's also Albert Coe there in this picture. And I'm gonna.
Yes, that's basically how he looked when I first met him.
Yeah.
After he had been released from his vow of secrecy, and when I met him, he looked exactly like that photo.
Yeah, yeah. So.
And the name of the new book, the modern book, is called Starfall.
Yeah.
Starfall. Okay.
Here's the illustration.
Yes. Can you enlarge that at all, Andrea?
No, not on my. No, that's people will have to do it on.
Okay.
My, I think so. Actually, he makes So in this rescue scene where he's pulling him up from there, he says, "This illustration shows our usual attire in the early morning chill of the wilderness. So moccasins, long trousers, a flannel shirt, and a bandana covering the forehead and draping down to the shoulders, with a felt hat pulled down over it. Our accessories always included a waterproof box of matches, sheath, hunting knife, belt, axe, and a coil of rope. The draped bandana and felt hat were to ward off the black flies that at times became quite an annoying problem in the deep wilderness. This garb of the forest is actually woven into a survival pattern, for a man stands quite alone when the adversity of nature overtakes him. In the progress of my stop, you will become aware of the separate roles these items played in the rescue and rudimental first aid that enabled the preservation of a life." Because he did use his hat to give Zret water.
Yes.
Gross, but hey. Hey, in this kind of situation. So yeah,
whatever works.
Whatever works. So that's the winch, the pole winch he made, the lever. Yeah.
Yes, to hoist him out of the crevice. So when he got him to the surface, he checked his leg and he saw that it was severely broken. Again, I mentioned that he put a splint on it, and he told this young fella, and at the time, he said that his one-piece outfit was so unique, and he said it was like a bluish color, and he said, he told the fellow, "How did you get here? I don't see any boat." And the fellow said, "Well, my father's an inventor," and he said, "I flew his plane, and it's parked back into the woods." And Albert's looking around, and this is 1920. Albert's 16 years of age. And 1920, there were biplanes, and they needed a long place to land or to take off. So he said, "How were you able to land that here?" And he said, "Well, my father invented a plane that I flew here." So Albert said to him, he said, "You're not going to be able to get back into the woods." He said, "Because your leg is severely broken." He said, "Let me help you." And the young fellow said, "No." He said, "Just help me to my feet." He says, "I'll be all right." So Albert helped him to his feet, and he said, "I don't think you're going to be able to make it." The fellow took a couple steps, and he collapsed on the ground. this occurred 3 times. And at the end of the third fall, the fellow said to Albert, he said, "You're right, I can't make it on my own." He said, "If you would be so kind as help me to my plane," but he said, "I must ask a favor of you, since my father invented this plane and it's still kept very quiet, very secret." He said, "Promise me you will not say anything regarding the plane that you're going to see." And Albert said, "Sure, all right." He said, I'll respect that." So he wrapped his arm around this fella, and no name was shared at that time. This fella shared no name with Albert. But Albert said, "My name is Albert." So he said, "Let me help you." So he wrapped his arm around his shoulder, and they got into the woods, and they got to the base of a small hill. And the fellows looked at Albert and said, "At the top of this hill, there's going to be a little clearing. And in that clearing is my plane." And he said, "Remember your promise not to talk to anybody or say anything about my plane." And Albert said, "Sure, I will honor that. I respect that." So they got to the top of the hill, and they looked down into the clearing, and the clearing was maybe 70 or 80 feet in diameter. And in the middle of it, he saw the most incredible sight he ever set his eyes upon. He said, in the middle of it was not a plane. He said it looked like 2 saucers, one on top of the other, that were silver in color or aluminum in color, and they were sitting on a tripod of 3 legs. So the fellow looked at Albert, and he saw the look of surprise on Albert's face, and he said, "Now remember your promise to me, Albert. You're not going to say anything about what you saw." And Albert said, "No, I will say nothing." So the fellow said to him, "Help me into the clearing and bring me to the rim of my airplane." So Albert helped him to the rim of the airplane. And again, this fellow was still calling it an airplane. And he reached underneath and he touched something that Albert couldn't see. And a hatch opened up in the center part of the craft. And he said to Albert, he said, "Would you bring me over to that hatch?" There was no ladder there, but somebody could pull themselves up on it very easily. So Albert brought him over to the center where the hatch was open. And he said to Albert, "Can you boost me up into my airplane?" So Albert said, "Sure." So he made a handhold for him, and he boosted the fellow up. And he said to Albert, and when Albert boosted him up, he said he saw a small seat inside, and he saw what looked to be miniature movie screens. Remember, there was no television back then. So he said they were like miniature movie screens inside this little airplane. And he said to Albert, "Albert, I know you said that you were looking for a place to portage to go across the river to avoid the rapids." And he said, "On the far bank where your friend is, there's going to be a place where you two can portage your canoe across and get past the rapids and not have any discomfort at all or not have any issues." And he also said to Albert, "Thank you so very much for what you did for me." And he said, "I'm going to close my hatch now and start my airplane." But he said, "I want you to go to the far edge of the clearing." He said, "Because when my airplane starts, it's going to create some turbulence and vibration." And he said, "I don't want you to be affected by it." So Albert said, "Okay." And they shook hands, and the hatch closed, and Albert went to the edge of the clearing, and he heard this low hum, and the hum increased in intensity until it was above the range of his hearing. And the next thing he knew, this little airplane lifted off the ground, and the tripod that it was sitting on, the 3 legs, rescinded into the bottom of the airplane, and it took off. And Albert couldn't believe what he just saw. So he gathered his rope and took it off of the pole that he had made for the hoist, and he went back to the river bank and started walking down, and he saw his friend on the far part of the bank, and they were able to connect. And his friend said, "Albert, I found a place where we could portage the canoe where there'd be no rapids." And they continued on their trip, and they took the rest of the day traveling along the river, and then they stopped for the night, and they prepared a campfire, and they ate something. And Albert's friend said, "I'm going to write a letter to my parents so the next town that we come across, we'll be able to mail it. And he said, I'm going to turn in right now. And Albert said, well, I'm going to stay out here for a while. And he was facing the river with the campfire in front of him. And he was thinking of the day's events. And he started wondering, did I really experience this? Did I really see this fella who had fallen into a crevice and had broken his ankle? And did I help him out? And I helped him to this little clearing where I saw the plane that he flew, and it was unlike anything I've ever seen before. Now, Andrea, if you could go back to the cover of the original book, I want to make a comment.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a little ship.
That's the ship. As he was thinking that, and he said it was a beautiful night sky. There was no moon, but he said he saw all the stars above him. And just as he was thinking, did I really have that experience? The little airplane showed up, and it actually was maybe 50 or 75 feet above the water. And as Albert saw that, he waved his hand, and he said that the little airplane did a motion like this. Tilting back and forth. I don't know if you could see it.
Yep, I can see it.
Andrea, can you do it on your end, Andrea?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is good.
So he said after that, he went back again to the craft, the little airplane, and he said it took off into the night sky like one of the stars. So they continued on their trip, and about probably a month later, Albert was at home, and he got a postcard in the mail. His mother gave him the mail. And remember, he's 16 years of age. Albert was born in 1904. Okay, so this was 1920, 16 years of age. And the postcard showed an image of the Hastings Hotel, which is in Hastings, New York. And on the back of it, it said, Albert, if you would like to renew our friendship that we established along the Mattawa River, would you be so kind as to meet me at the Hastings Hotel? And he gave him a date, which was going to be on a Saturday morning, about 10 o'clock. And he says, I will meet you at the Hastings Hotel, and we'll renew our friendship. And it was signed, your friend, Zret, Z-R-E-T. Okay? Mm-hmm. So Albert was so excited about it. And the date was about 2 weeks from the time that he received the postcard. So he told his mom and dad that he was going to go to the Hastings Hotel and meet this fella that wanted to meet with him. And he got up early that morning, and he dressed very nicely, and he went to the lobby of the Hastings Hotel, and he was sitting in there, and he's watching these people walk around in the lobby. And he said, he started to think, am I going to recognize this fella? He said, it's been some time since I last saw him. And then when he was thinking that, he said, the fellow walked up in front of him where Albert was sitting, and he was wearing a beautiful suit. And he said, Albert, it's so good to see you. And they shook hands again. And he said, Albert, he said, I have my car here. And he said, I have 2 fishing poles. Would you like to go on a little fishing excursion with me? And Albert was so excited. He said, yes. He said, I'd be happy to go with you. So they got into his car. And again, this is a model car from 1920, which Albert was used to seeing. So he didn't think it was unusual that this fellow was driving, but he thought this car was a very, very nice car. And Albert said that all during the trip, he kept asking him about his family, and he was asking him about school and how was things at school and how was the rest of his canoe trip. And he didn't allow Albert to ask any questions. He just kept bantering. So they got to the place where they were going to go fishing, and it was a very isolated area. And he parked his car along a gravel area, and they went to the bank of this pond, and they both put their fishing rods in the water. And this fellow Zret is still talking and asking questions of Albert. And this fellow Zret notices that there's this log floating in this pond, and there's these little turtles running to the edge of the log and jumping off the side. And he said, Albert, see that log with the turtles running to the edge and jumping off? He said, those turtles are very much like mankind. He said, they keep doing the same thing over and over again. And with that, Albert couldn't hold back anymore. It's like the dam burst. And he said, what do you mean mankind is like those little turtles and they keep doing the same things over and over again. And he said, where are you from? And where did you get that little plane? And he started firing all these questions at Zret. And Zret said, wait a minute, Albert. He said, first of all, I want to thank you. You saved my life. And he said, I was given permission to be able to share with you who I am and what it is that I'm doing here. And he said, first of all, I am not from Earth. And he said, I'm from an area that's called Tau Ceti, the constellation Tau Ceti. And he said, it's about 54 light years from Earth. Now, he's mentioning terms to Albert that Albert had never heard before. He never heard of light years, the distance it takes light to travel in 1 year. So he says to Albert, he said, we lived on a planet in the Tau Ceti constellation, and he said our planet was starting to run out of water. And he said, we realized that we're going to have to leave our planet and relocate to another area where we'd be able to find a quality of life that would be able to support our population. And he said they had done studies and they found that the area, our solar system, had planets that were capable of supporting life. So they built these giant craft that could hold 50,000 individuals, and they started a trek from their home planet to Earth. And he said that the distance from Earth to their planet was like 54, what we would consider light years. And he said that when they entered into our solar system, he said some of them were traveling at such a high rate of velocity that several of them crashed into the sun. They said one of them crashed onto Mars, and he said the others landed on Venus. And he said they viewed Earth at that time, and they said Earth had a different configuration in regards to planets than it did now. And he said there were two continents that existed, which no longer exist. They were called, at that time, one was Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean, and the other was Lemuria that existed in the Pacific Ocean. And he said that when they viewed the humankind at that time, they were very primitive. They were living a very primitive lifestyle, and they decided to interact with them to raise their consciousness and awareness to a better quality of life. They taught them how to use fire, and this was, according to what Zret said, this was almost 50,000 years ago. And they said they taught them how to use agriculture. They taught them how to use energy. They taught them how to uplift their style of living to be more towards what the beings from Tau Ceti had been able to experience. And they said that the population of Atlantis was much more advanced than the population on Lemuria. They said that the Atlanteans were more scientifically capable and were absorbing knowledge at a faster rate than the Lemurians. They said the Lemurians were more spiritually oriented and were more well-adjusted than the Atlanteans. The Atlanteans were looking for power, and they had found that the people from Tau Ceti had the ability to break down the molecular structure of matter. And the scientists on Atlantis wanted that technology. And the visitors said, no, it would be like giving matches to children. But over a period of time, they were talked into giving that information to the Atlantean scientists. And to their dismay, the Atlantean scientists were using threats of subjugation over the Lemurians. And they said, if you didn't submit to our rule and to our power, we would destroy you, that we had a weapon that could destroy your continent. So things went from bad to worse, and the Atlanteans didn't get their way with the Lemurians, and they set off this device that they thought would affect only Lemuria, but it wound up affecting both Atlantis and Lemuria and caused both continents to submerge. And Albert said when that occurred, they had an agreement never to interact directly with humankind, that they would keep their distance and monitor them and watch them, which they continued to do. And they saw how warlike humankind was, and the rise and fall of many, many empires over that period of time. And he said that they realized when the 1800s came along that we discovered the use of radium the use of X-rays, the use of uranium. And he said that we were on the cusp of opening up avenues of technology that could be very destructive to the planet Earth. So they took a vote, and they said that they needed to have 100 volunteers come to Earth for a period of 100 years from the year 1900 to the year 2000. And he said that the volunteers would be spaced all around the country, all around the world, on different continents, and some continents would have more visitors than others because of their population. And their purpose was to try to elevate consciousness and awareness away from a warlike type of mentality. So Zret was told that they could be here, but they were not to bear children. They were not to have any interaction with giving birth to children here. And they could only stay in one location for a 5-year period because they did not age. They always looked to be like in their mid-20s to maybe late 20s. So they would change locations every 5 years, work locations, and some of them would be in engineering, some of them would be in scientific research, some of them were in medical, and there were no women that were allowed. They were all men that came here because they felt that Earth was too barbaric to have their women subjected to the atmosphere that was here on Earth. And these men would meet on a regular basis and confer and talk about what it was that they were able to accomplish in the countries that they were working with and how they were able to uplift consciousness. But they were told they could never reveal who they were. Albert was the only one that was given the opportunity to know Zret, and he got a chance to go on board their craft and meet with the other 99 visitors that were here that looked all like humans. Some were black, some were Oriental, some were dark-skinned, some were, they looked like Native Americans. And he said that the work that they were doing was really phenomenal, that they were trying to guide us away from nuclear weapons, from atomic weapons, nuclear weapons. And he said, trying to deal with us was so difficult because we are so stubborn and so warlike in our environment and in our outlook towards others that we wanted to subjugate people, that we wanted to have control over them. And that's not the way that they live. And that's not the way they felt that we should live. So they gave Albert the release to start talking about his experiences with him. But I wanted to go back and mention to you that after Albert had his first experience with Zret in 1920, Albert went on and became an engineer and wound up working with Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was making a film in the 20s called Hell's Angels. And it was about aircraft dogfights between the Germans and the British and the Americans. And he had invested all his money into creating these dogfights, but there was a problem. The cameras in that period of time did not have the capability of being able to film the battles of the aircraft properly. Albert came up with a design for camera work that could be mounted on the biplanes at that time that would create an accurate representation of the battle sequences. And his camera lens that he came up with and camera technology was so unique that he was given a patent for it. So it created a very nice financial stability for Albert for the rest of his life. And he would tell stories about how he met Howard Hughes and how demanding he was and how much of a perfectionist he was, and how if Albert hadn't developed this new type of camera technology, he would not have been successful in that film as it did develop. So he wound up having a very satisfied and very financially secure lifestyle. He continued to work as an engineer and worked in different aspects of film and engineering. And in the early 60s, he wound up getting a stroke while he was driving. He was driving down Route 130 in New Jersey. It's a 3-lane road on both sides that has a concrete wall. And unbeknownst to Albert, there was a police car behind him. And when Albert suffered a stroke, his car veered and hit into the wall on Route 130 and then veered off of that, hit the curbing. And the police officer behind him thought that the driver was drunk. And when the car finally stopped, he went over and dragged Albert out and realized he wasn't drunk, that he had suffered a stroke. So they rushed him to the hospital. They put him in an ambulance and got him to the hospital in Willingboro, New Jersey. It was at that time Kennedy Hospital. And they notified his family, and they brought the family in and said that he was on a death watch. That they said Albert would not survive the night. His injuries were so severe. So they had him in a critical care area. They couldn't do anything on him to save him. They couldn't do any surgery. His injuries were that severe. Well, his wife and his children were in the waiting room all that night. And during the night, they had a visitor. Zret came into the hospital, and he was wearing his one-piece suit, and he was wearing a belt that had the lights on it, and one of the lights had the ability of creating invisibility. And he cloaked himself in invisibility, and he worked on Albert all night long in his room, where he was in that room by himself. And when the morning came up, when the morning rose, the sun rose, Zret had left. But Albert woke up and was able to sit up in bed, and his family couldn't believe that he had recovered from his accident. And he didn't say what had happened to him. He just said, something miraculous happened to me. So they were able to correct all the infirmities that Albert had in that tragic accident, with the exception of his right knee. His right knee banged into the dashboard and fractured the kneecap, and he walked with a slight limp. And Zret told him later on, he said, Albert, because you saved my life, I was given permission to save your life. And he said, I came in that night and I spent the night working on you. And he said, the only thing we couldn't repair properly was your kneecap. And he said, to repair that properly would require bringing you to Venus, and you would wind up getting acclimated to the frequency of Venus, but you couldn't leave again. And he said, but your body would be repaired, and your knee would no longer have the affliction that it did. And he said, you would live the lifespan that we live. Their lifespan was up to 2,800 years of age. So Albert said, that is a very generous offer. He said, but one thing, he said, I want to ask you, can I bring my wife with me? And Zret told Albert, unfortunately, this opportunity is extended only to you, Albert. Since you saved my life, I could save yours. It's extended to you and not to your wife. So Albert said, if that's the case, he said, I will forego going to Venus for this final improvement. He said, I want to spend the rest of my life here with my wife. And I thought, what a beautiful thing to say, to be able to give up that opportunity to have an extended lifespan and live among people that he found to be friends, and to spend that time with his wife, whom he loved completely and dearly. And it was so nice. After Albert lectured at our Del Valle UFO facility, we became friends, and I would go and visit him and take him to radio stations and newspapers to be interviewed. And Albert never lost his positive aspect for what it was he had experienced. And on some of the radio shows, the people who would call in would say he was a crank, or he was senile, that he made all this up. And he would always present his story in the same manner, with the same level-headedness, and say, well, all I can do is offer you this story. It's my experience. And he said, I lived it. And he said, it's all true. So I took him to this one newspaper, and I don't know, Linda, if you remember Levittown, Pennsylvania?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
I took him to a newspaper that was based in Levittown, Pennsylvania, and we were talking to the editor there, and he interviewed Albert, and he said, Frank, he said, what Albert is saying is true. He said, we have a teletype here. You could hear the teletype in the background with news that comes in from all around the world. And he said, I've been here where somebody's tried to report a UFO sighting, and he said the teletype would lock up as the story was starting to be printed, as somebody was putting the story out, and it would lock up the teletype, and in bold 3-inch letters, it would say, do not continue with this transmission. So wherever that was coming from Washington or wherever, that would lock up the teletypes. So I'll never forget this fellow telling me that. And he said, Frank, I experienced seeing it myself. They would know that somebody's trying to put out a news story that would be talking about UFOs or visitors, and they did not want that information to go out.
Wow.
So one of the times I went to visit Albert, and his wife made a really nice lunch for me, and we were talking, and Albert said that Zret had given him this powder that almost looked like Alka-Seltzer, but it was a powder instead of a tablet. And he told Albert to mix this with pure water, spring water if you could, and take this on a daily basis. And
I know what it is.
Oh,
you know what it is?
Is it monoatomic gold?
He never revealed it to me what it was. But
Monoatomic gold.
He said
I
it was a
bet
white
you
powder, and he said it
Yes.
dissolved immediately in the water. And he said he
Yes.
drank it, and he said he felt so exhilarated. He said he felt energy like you can't believe.
Yes.
And Fred also told him to minimize his intake of meat, not to smoke or drink, to keep away from drugs. And
Mhm.
with the exception of Albert's having that slight limp, he had really, really great health. And I remember saying to his wife, who was such a gracious woman, I said to her, I said, Mrs. Coe, I always called her by, her married name. I said, Mrs. Coe, Albert has these wonderful friends that live amongst the stars. Have you ever met them? And she said, no, I never met them. But Albert has a lot of young friends who come to the house. And he lived in Philadelphia. He lived off of Cotman Avenue, Deepman
Oh, I know where that is.
You know where that's at? And
I lived there for a little while.
Did you? And he had this
Yeah.
beautiful porch that they would go out and have, enjoy the air. And his wife, Mrs. Coe, said that Albert would come home and there'd be a knock on the door and these young boys would be there. And Albert would go out on the porch and talk to them. And she said, they were really nice boys. They were always dressed in jeans and they had, dressed nice. And she said, but I never met any of the visitors. So she went back into the kitchen and Albert leaned over and he said, Frank, she met them. They're the young boys that would come over to visit him. And she said that he said she never realized that they're like in their mid-20s to late 20s. And she said, Albert has all these young friends who always come over. So he told me that when he was on board the ship, when the ship would move, he said, it's like sitting in your living room. There's no sensation of movement at all, no distress whatsoever. And he said, the comfort of the accommodations on the craft are absolutely unbelievable. And he said that they would take him to see other planets. And he said sometimes he would be gone for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time. And his wife didn't mind. She knew that he was visiting with his friends. He said he had seen the moon. He had seen artifacts on the moon. He said he had seen things that are on Mars, things that are on Venus, but he couldn't land there. But he said they continued to interact with him, and he continued to bring him into the meetings that they would have with the other 99 star visitors that were part of this project. Now, unfortunately, Albert and I separated because I relocated to California, and I was living in Europe for about 4.5 years. And Albert left us in October of 1984. But he was so happy to publish this book called
The Shocking Truth.
Shocking Truth, yes, The Shocking Truth. And he published it himself, and he would sell it. It was never through bookstores. He would sell it for like $3.25, $3.75. And that book today is so rare. If you see it on eBay or Etsy, it's like $600, $2,400, $2,800. It's really, really rare. And he never sold it to make money. He sold it just to share his story with people. And he was always so humble, and he was always so gracious, and he never forced the story on anyone at all. He would share the story that this is my experience, and the visitors are here, and they're friendly, and they said we're part of a cosmic family. And at some point, they're hoping we could set aside our warlike tendencies. Now, one of the illustrations that you have also, Andrea, is when he was on board one of their large craft, and it shows their monitors. Can you bring that up again?
Oh.
It's not the small scout ship that Zret had. It's on the larger ship where they would meet with the other 99 visitors that were here for that 100-year period.
That one's further down. I think that's the other. We did this picture. We did that one.
Yep.
No, we're getting there somewhere. I did an AI of what he possibly in the woods, so of Zret.
Yes.
I'll do a better one.
Well, if you could communicate with him upstairs and with Albert, that would be wonderful.
I did a little bit, and I think his name is Aral. I heard his name is Aral.
Okay. This is inside. I'm sorry, Entry. Go ahead.
No. This is. I think this is the picture. It says, what's it say? It's panels of a spaceship control center.
Yes.
Yeah. So I got that. See, this is the book I have.
Yes. Now, each one of those was, again, like a miniature television screen, but they can monitor all aspects anywhere in our solar system and do close-ups of the planets and the inhabitants on the planets and view what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, you had another one, too, of their craft when they left.
So what Al says about this one, he says, is in the early 1920s when these panels were originally described to me, it was a bit beyond my complete understanding. At that time, our science was in a very primal stage of radio development. Radar, television, radio, telescopes, light splitting devices, computers, and many of the electronic marvels that today are taken for granted. Not even a remote thought in the mind of the layman. So over years of Zret's teaching and our arrival to some of the principles embodied in this control center, it became very clear that the great central panel was a highly specialized computer to automatically control every action of the ship, its force fields, gravitational and electromagnetic fields. The scanners, not only the eyes of a guidance system, but also put the universe at the fingertips of its operators. Truly an amazing feat of electronic wizardry. So that's what Al said on that picture. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to draw your attention to both Andrea and Linda, that this image is very similar to the image on Hatan's home planet, Terminus Hatan, where you can view any part of the galaxy, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of monitors that could zoom in and tape information or recording information that's happening all throughout our Milky Way galaxy. And he's a record keeper of the galaxy, and his name is Hatan, and his control room looks very similar to this, but I believe there's a lot more monitors in Hatan's home planet. And you said you also had the image of the craft that left Tau Ceti.
Let's see. It
should be the next one, Andrea.
Yep, there it is. There it is. Yep. Farewell to the planet of origin. Yeah.
And again, those ships could hold 50,000 inhabitants of Tau Ceti, and they built them specially to come to our solar system so that they could survive and continue their life cycle and live a normal life cycle. And again, they had the ability to rejuvenate their bodies so that the men and women always look between 25 to 28 years of age, and they could live 2,800 years.
Yes. And Al says here for this picture, he says, farewell to the planet of origin. This illustration depicts the barren desolation of a planet that had died. Naked stone, dust, sand, and craters, its only feature. Yet a land of origin, home, lives deep in the heart of all. A reluctance to leave pulls at these heartstrings, even in the face of an inevitable flight of salvation. It was pretty traumatic because a lot of them died. They didn't survive the journey. Crashed, a lot of them. Before each contingent boards on arriving craft, they gather under inspection of the base of a great white cliff and said farewell before they boarded that ship. Yeah, I didn't make a note of it, but he says here where. No, I have to dig it up. But this book, there's one more picture. This one here, towards the end here. This was when it's when the human brain conceived its final destructive device, and that was the nuclear weapon.
Yes, the device that could break down the molecular structure of matter.
Yeah, and Al says an innocent device of benefit was researched for its power to destroy by the white race of Earth, who had been educated and raised to a high state of intelligence by Zret's ancestors. In a parallel of today, the descendants of this same race have researched the atom, the creative power of a universe, to reveal its secrets for slaughter and conquest through military might. Just 12,800 years ago, the vehicle of this first research was turned loose. Land barriers deteriorated, billions of tons of seawater instantly vaporized to release the sodium content of its salt that had been stabilized in solution. Tremendous explosion, earthquake, and volcanic reaction drowned out the screams of the dying as a continent exploded. The ocean finally inundated the scene of this Holocaust, and today roll placidly over a graveyard of horror that was once a land of life and beauty. This is Atlantis. The first attempt at unleashing nature's latent destructive power as a tool of man's lust ended in shattering a portion of a planet's face. Who may foretell the result of a next attempt? Well, there won't be. So we know there won't be.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really profound. And
yeah, this little. So this book here, this is you can buy the book. I mean,
yes,
a modern but it's called Starfall. So put that on.
And it's in a larger size than the original. It's in a much larger format.
And it's the same exact text though. I didn't show the chapter illustration. Each chapter showed a guy.
Yeah, there's illustrations all through it. Yeah.
But
how many pages is it? How many pages is it?
This is there's a letter at the end, so I don't know. It's 100.
Can you read the letter? Can you read the letter, Andrea?
140 pages.
Yeah, that's about right. Yep.
It's not too bad. It's very easy to read.
Yes.
We have big type.
It's hard to actually put down. Like once you start reading it, you really don't want to put it down.
Good, yeah. He's an excellent storyteller.
Right. Let's see.
One thing that I found interesting was when he talks about Venus, and life on Venus. The interesting thing about Venus is that it vibrates at such a high frequency compared to Earth, because Earth is so dense and it's such it's a lower frequency. So that's another reason why they can live so much longer than we do, because they're vibrating so much higher. Yes. And they're just like that white powder that he was talking about is something that Earth has, that other planets have come to Earth to try to acquire, that white monatomic gold. And there's a way of extracting that monatomic gold in order to make yourself live much longer, even here on Earth. So there are groups of people that were interested in doing that, and I won't go into detail on that, but that is something that does exist. So I just found that really fascinating when you brought that up, because I just immediately, it just rang a bell, like my intuition was like, woo, that's what that is.
Well,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. The only thing he could maybe relate to was the action of Alka-Seltzer, but it was in a powder form. But he said it would fizz just like Alka-Seltzer, and Zret told him before it stopped fizzing to drink it.
Yes. That's so amazing. I love all those little details, and I think that a lot of those things have been confirmed to be true as we go along. And there's other books out there that are really interesting, like the one Elizabeth, what was her name?
Oh, Elizabeth Clare.
Claire, right, Claire, and her book about her love that she had from another planet. And she actually went to the other planet and did have a density problem, because she had to adjust to coming back to Earth afterwards. And it was very difficult for her. And she always had health problems afterwards, because there is such a huge difference between the frequency of other planets and our own. And ours is so dense. So that's a lot of the reason why we have these issues and these problems here.
Absolutely. And I want to say this. Go ahead, Andrea, go ahead.
It's actually changing. Those issues are going away.
And are you going to be able to read that?
Rises. I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, are you going to be able to read that letter, Andrea?
Quite a few, so I can just read an excerpt from one of them. This is excerpt from, it's quite a few, there's quite long. So it's excerpts from letter number 6, January 10th, 1965. It's on the Earth in general. A gentleman. Previous letters, in essence, have been an analytic criticism of demographic law that has muddled through the pages of time, unable to separate fact from fancy. and to dramatize the acts of ego and the arrogance of ideology, which refuses to establish the relative balance of matter to matter. As fancy becomes a shaping force and a way of life, it must inevitably consummate in a chaos of thought, and the social science complied from the prophecies of this neo-primitive dogma, combining a limited understanding of observable environment with the fiction of forces wholly undetermined, cannot but hang endlessly in a vacuum of suspension as internal conflict forbids stabilization. These tenets, welling from the untrained, the unscientific mind, have merely distorted for examination of this cosmological problem through the unbiased scrutiny of science, reveals an immeasurable cauldron of uncontrolled force, of turbulence. It is brewed in the violence of parasitical motivation and patterned in geometric lines of creation, destruction, rebirth, through exothermic and endothermic action of energy, but absolutely devoid of love and compassion. This minus factor in animalistic association and environmental adaptitude can and must be applied by present, more highly evolved atomic creation in the manner and creation in the there we go. Turn the page. In the materialization of man. But if he stumbles onward, eyes blinded in egoism and superstitious fear, his laws only abet these awesome forces rather than bend them to a will and a determination of equalizing philosophy. I can read another one from this is excerpt number 3 from letter number 6. Varying materialization of hominidae have roamed the surface crust of this planet for many millions of years. Yet, except for one fleeting moment of workable insight as to constitution 6 miles below the feet or its ocean bottoms, almost as hazy today as when the first seedlings of land life crawled from the haven of its depths into the brilliant sun of a distant past. Thorough research of these unexplored domains will give rise to sobering implications regarding geology and life form patterns. Also, throughout this period, you have traveled uncountable billions of miles with your planet in the effortless ease of a magnetic line of force, but regardless, without confirmation and only elemental research as to inner mechanisms and safeguards, you plan to leave this surface and explore a vast dimension within the weightless confines of an artificially propelled projectile. In defiance to all characteristic of evolved environment, yes, Earthmen, as in possession of superior intellect, but its application surely manifests in peculiar practice and many weird customs. During the past 70 years, through improved instrumentation and basic research, glimmerings of truth have been defined, but to date cannot seem to establish a conformity to the benefit which this newfound knowledge presents. We have followed the probing of your eminent philosophers and physicists in their effort to extract logic from the negation of theory that surrounds a great truth, and have felt with them the vexation that the fear of ostracism, not only from the power organizations, but that which the ignorance of social prejudice have created, and until very recently an almost insurmountable obstacle in the supplanting of mysticism with factual science. But if you have had the power of conviction and the courage to break precedent, although advance has been agonizingly slow, and in full comprehension of the paradox, we can well understand their dilemma as to the interjection of research proof into a fantasy of hierarchy. Of this eminent group, one man stands without peer in the personage of Albert Einstein. And surely his demise, a regrettable event in modern history, and if perchance you outlive the present bomb craze, the influence of this remarkable work should carry you far along the road in a quest of understanding many problems he did not have time to complete, and the motivation of the cosmos, more or less the will-o'-the-wisp of his research, although he came so very close to unraveling its basis of secrecy. So this is about relativity and, Euclidean, he goes on. So
Thank you, Andrea.
Quite a few letters at the end of this. I don't know if they're in the PDF. I'll have to check the PDF. I don't know if these are just in the new version, or if these letters from Zret are in the original. You have to check that in the PDF.
Yes, we'll check that out. And yeah. I want to add that what I remember most about Albert was his wonderful smile. He never raised his voice. He always talked in a calm, communicative way. And as much as people would try to trigger him, they did not trigger him. He would not get upset at people. And I always saw that glint in his eye, that he saw that what we're going to experience in the future is going to be beyond what we can imagine. And he was the first contactee I ever met and laid the foundation for other contactees that I would meet along the way. But I know at some point I'll see him again and see that wonderful smile of his. And what an incredible gentleman. And for our visitors to choose him as a spokesman, they chose very wisely. They really did. And what you read was cosmic wisdom. It's cosmic wisdom.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's something about Albert Coe that's so appealing.
Yes, he was so down to earth and so genuine, and yet he never let ego interfere. He never lived a lifestyle above just a common individual and a common man and his wife living in Philadelphia, and everything about life was a joy. He expressed joy in everything that he did because he knew there's a lot more than what we figured that there is going on, and he was gifted with that knowledge and that awareness. And thank God that they freed him from his secrecy so he could share that story. And I'm telling you, a lot of people don't want to hear positive news. They want to hear negative news.
Yes.
That's right. Interesting you mentioned that zenness, because of all the, I meet so many contactees now, and that's a common denominator of all of them is no one wants to come forward. No one wants to, be in the public eye. Everyone's very calm and relaxed and, just trying to process a lot of what they experienced in their life. And I think it's just that, lack of ego, matter of fact, quality, a desire to be of service.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing all contactees I meet are like, how can I be, what can I do? What can I do? And it's just, I think that's what, separates the real deal from people who might be interested in other sort of, things that, again, it's a free will planet, so you can do what you want. But yeah, it's definitely a hallmark, in most of the people that you talk to.
And Andrea, some people can't understand that it could be as simple as the way Albert explained it.
Yeah.
They find it hard to accept the simplicity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
but also they don't want to think that it could have been hidden from them in any way. Most people don't want to believe that. Like we would have seen it. It would have been obvious. Like, or they would have told us about this.
Well, the slander campaign was so bad. Everybody, the people who did see all these things, they oftentimes just, and it's still there today. I mean, almost everybody I meet is still, a little nervous about, stepping forward or they don't want to step forward still. So it's still, but I think what people have to understand is nowadays it's not, and it may be regional, but, I step forward all the time, and I've never met anyone who didn't have curiosity. I've never been. I've never been.
I think a lot of it is too that now the veil has been lifted. Somewhat. Yeah. And they're showing themselves, first of all.
Well, yeah.
And second of all, more people have cameras that are on their phones now. It's just easier. It's easier to access like all of this information. And back then they could, crush any kind of information from being put out there back then. Now it's almost impossible to do that.
Right.
And so things have changed so much since then. And thankfully that's happened because we can do this now.
Yes.
We could put this out there.
What's nice is it's kind of, I was going to say, it's just revindicating all these people who've now these original, a lot of the Venusian contactees, whatever, the original people that the contact during the mission of the contactee, the open contactee, it's now validating everything and to say, hey, these guys were the real deal,
Yeah.
And for him having that experience in 1920, I would refer to him as the grandfather of contactees, because I don't know anybody before that period who had an experience. And he said the guy appeared to be very close to Albert in age, but he was much, much older.
Yeah.
There were contactees in the 19th century, but they didn't do it like they didn't come forward. There was there were people, I believe, it was in the New England area. was it mid 1900s? No, I mean mid 1800s.
Yeah, mid-1800s.
There were, and they had gone up in ships. But I don't, they didn't come, I mean, obviously, they really didn't come forward and describe like Al did, but there are newspaper accounts of craft in the 19th century that people were witnessing, so.
All throughout history, really. I mean,
Yeah.
if you read the book, The Complete Works of Charles Fort,
Yes.
it talks about that. It goes way, way, way back,
Yeah.
of all of the accounts of things happening in the sky.
Yeah.
So a good book if anybody's interested.
Well, Andrea, I want to thank you for providing us with that new edition of Albert Coe's book, because The Shocking Truth, if people research it, it's available as a free PDF, but if they can have access to the book themselves, they'll really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to put the link to the free. I think there's actually 2 new versions. I've seen a different version as well of Starfall, which is the same, which is the Albert Coe story. But there's also some YouTube channels of people that have, that are reading the book or showing the book. And but yeah, if folks want to, get the free, I'll put the link for the free copy, and then other folks will probably want to have the hand, once you read it again, I think I want to get the real, so. Yeah.
Andrea, who's the publisher? Who's the publisher, Andrea?
Inner Light Global.
Okay.
So this has this has introductions of some gives you some background story of these, the other contactees from this period. Some little histories of Albert Coe. People, they mentioned Adamski. There's some photos in here of some other contactees, famous contactees.
Did you get yours on Amazon?
Yep.
Okay, that's where I got mine.
Yep. Yeah, this is Timothy Green Beckley and Sean Castile do the intro on this text. So it's
okay. Good.
Yeah,
well, I'm glad, because that book is so obscure, people wouldn't be able to afford it, and thank God that they brought it forward.
Yes.
Yes, great text. That's great.
And I'm a book in hand person. I like to read. I like to.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So
it's good holding that vibration in your hand, isn't it?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
For those who are bookish amongst us, exactly.
Yes. Sure. Thank you for allowing us to share this opportunity and the experience that Albert had provided to us. And to me, he was a true pioneer and a gentleman, someone who you would never think that he would be trying to draw attention to himself and not the work that was being done by the visitors.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm so happy we were able to drag you back on here, Frank.
It's always a joy to talk about these folks. It's always a joy to talk about.
Oh, you have the most beautiful, as Semyasi says, the most beautiful delivery, and it's such a lovely, get a cup of tea and relax and hear these stories. It's it's just I don't know. I think we need this. It's just something that your soul kind of yearns for. So yeah.
Yes.
Well,
as I said,
we gotta have you come on and talk more about Val.
Sure. As I said, these stories have become part of my DNA.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear them for the first time and they resonate with you for the rest of your life. They stay with you because these people are so special, and their quietness is what draws you into knowing that they're genuine and sincere.
Yeah.
Because the truth whispers, it doesn't have to shout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Well said. Well said.
See you upstairs. See you upstairs.
We'll see you guys upstairs. All of our friends upstairs. And we want to thank all of our friends and viewers for not only, taking time out of their day to hang out with us, but also I always say, please, subscribe to Potentials. A lot of great stuff, a little different than what we're doing, but on the same line, give you a little different flavor there. Definitely subscribe to Linda's channel, Potentials. I don't think you'll regret that decision. So
thank you.
All right, guys, thank you, and we'll be back, right? Okay. Bye.
Ciao for now.